The BRRRR method is the most powerful wealth building strategy in real estate. It allows you to buy properties and own real estate using other people's money. My name is Sam and I've done over 300 BRRRR deals on single family houses, apartment complexes, and self-storage facilities. And I've been able to buy over $50 million worth of real estate, all using other people's money with the BRRRR method. In this video, I'm going to quickly explain what the BRRRR method is so you have a rounded understanding of it. And then I'm going to go over the top 5 common mistakes that newer real estate investors make while trying to utilize the BRRRR method. I mean, I have over 2,100 students that have bought over $500 million worth of real estate, most of them starting from scratch. So I know what it takes and I know the mistakes that new real estate investors make. If you want to buy real estate this year, hit that like button. As I stated, I have utilized this method to build generational wealth all on other people's dime. Let me give the Cliff Notes version of what the BRRRR method is. The BRRRR method stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and systemize. What you do is you borrow money to buy a distressed property. Then you borrow money from that same source or a separate source to repair that distressed property. So now you have taken a distressed property and made it nice and livable using somebody else's money. At that point, you get the property rented and start to collect rent and make this a cash producing asset. Then you go to a local bank and do a cash out refinance. That bank will appraise the property and they'll give you a loan for up to 80% of that value. And that loan is a cashier's check. You take that cashier's check and you pay back whoever you borrowed the money from to buy and repair the property plus interest. So now they're paid off, you're still collecting rent and you use the rent to pay back the bank. That cash out refinance loan you got, that is now a long-term 25, 30-year mortgage and you use the rent to pay back the bank every single month. That may be complicated or you may have gotten that. At the end of this video, I'm going to shoot you to another video that explains the BRRRR method with a real life deal and real life numbers so you can fully grasp it. But just know that you can buy as much real estate as you want without using a dime of your own money if you can maximize this BRRRR method. If you can understand and implement this BRRRR method, and this video will help you avoid these 5 mistakes that I've made and a lot of new investors make. Mistake number 1 is not buying the distressed property at a deep enough of a discount. Now, you're not going to make this work if you're buying retail ready properties. You have to find a source of distressed off-market properties so you can buy them at a deep enough discount. You need to create equity simply by signing on the dotted lines on the purchase, and then you add even more equity by repairing the property and adding to the value. If you can buy deep enough and rehab and add enough equity, that will allow you to do that loan with the bank to pay off your initial lenders. So you must buy the property deep enough and you have to stick to your numbers. The best formula to use to ensure that you're buying these properties deep enough is the max allowable offer formula. The formula is ARV times 75% minus all your repairs and holding costs. ARV stands for after repair value. So if you're looking at this distressed property, you need to be able to calculate what it's going to be worth after it's repaired. So you put that after repair value in the formula. Then you use the multiplication of 75% and then you subtract out all your holding costs and your rehab costs, and that will give you the number to purchase. For simple math, let's say that a property is worth $200,000 after it's fixed up. So you take that ARV of $200,000, you multiply it by 75%, which gives you $150,000. And at that point, you subtract out all your repairs, all your holding costs, including your utilities and costs of money, insurance, and taxes, and whatever that number is, you subtract off of that $150,000, and that's where you should be purchasing this distressed property. So let's say you did the math, and after everything, this property needs $60,000. ARV $200,000 times 75%, which is $150,000, minus that $60,000 in repairs, gives you a $90,000 purchase price. You need to get good at running this formula, and you can see where things can get a little wonky. I'm guessing if your head's starting to spin. What if the property's not worth $200,000? What if it's worth $180,000? And what if that $60,000 rehab turns into an $80,000 rehab? We'll get into those more here in a minute, but the biggest part of this is make sure to underwrite these properties properly, and you can do that by getting a second set of eyes on the deal from another investor. I mean, this is why a lot of people join my community, and if you're interested at all in it, the top of the description lets you apply to have a call to see if you're a good fit. But having a second set of eyes on this underwriting process can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars over a short period of time. The best rule of thumb for me is to be super conservative, meaning if you think that house is worth $200,000, say it's worth $180,000. If you want to multiply it by 70% over 75%, you're going to get more of a discount. And if you think it needs $60,000, maybe throw $70,000 in the rehab budget. So be conservative on all three parts of the max allowable offer formula, and you will be more likely to buy the property deep enough that you're able to actually have enough equity to make this whole thing work using none of your own money. And again, I'm going to send you to a video at the end that explains the BRRRR method in further detail if you need it. Also, another quick secret is if you're in this deal and it doesn't look like it's going to cash flow because you screwed up the max allowable offer formula, you can always sell it and hopefully break even or make a little bit of money because you repaired it and maybe you're looking to get it rented and it won't cash flow. You can always sell it to an end user or another investor to try to get your money back and not lose on the deal. There's a ton of different ways to be adaptable in real estate. That's why I love it. Mistake number 2, underestimating the rehab. There is a lot that goes into rehabbing properties, and it's really hard to get an exact firm number before you buy it because things change. You open up a wall, you pull out some floor tile, and you realize that there are potentially more issues than you can see with the naked eye. So underestimating rehab is a huge part of this, and it can get even worse if you underestimate the rehab and decide to pull things off of the scope of work so that the property is not as nice as you plan to make it. It won't appraise for as much, and you might not get the tenant you're looking to attract. So having the right rehab budget and executing it properly is huge. And another thing that can happen is maybe your rehab is going to plan, but it's taking longer to manage. If you think it's going to take you 3 or 4 months and it takes you 6 months, not the end of the world. However, those additional 2 or 3 months are probably costing you thousands of dollars in holding costs between the utilities, real estate taxes, insurance, as well as the cost of money because you're borrowing money with interest to actually do this project. So keeping the project tight and on schedule is huge. A couple solutions here. One is walk the property with a contractor before you close on it. When you get it under contract, put a 10 or a 15-day contingency in the contract. It's very normal and very standard in real estate investment deals. So put that contingency in there and walk the project with a general contractor or other contractors and get hard bids from them. It still may go over a little bit. However, this will give you a more solid number to go off of, and you're within that contingency period, meaning you're able to back out of the contract if that contingency is not met. Put a financial or inspection contingency in there. If the project ends up being way more than you thought, you can legally back out and get your earnest money back. The other side of this is if you do this after the contingency period is over, you can't back out of the deal. However, you might switch your exit strategy and start it as a flip right from the jump, or you might decide to just go ahead and mark it up a couple $1,000s and sell it to an investor that's maybe a little bit more experienced. They can get the rehab done faster. So just know, get as much information as you can, and at that point, you can make decisions for the best exit strategy for that deal and how you bought it. Another great way to avoid over rehabbing or overspending on rehab would be adding a 10 to 20% buffer. Most of my students add 10 to 15% in as a buffer, meaning you run your entire rehab scope with or without bids, and you add an additional 10% fluff just in case, because you're going to need that just in case. So it's a $50,000 rehab with the fluff, make it a $55,000 to $60,000 rehab, and still run your numbers through that max allowable offer formula and still make your offer. And if you get it, with all things being conservative, you are much more likely to be successful. And if you want even more help on this rehab process, I have in the description a rehab calculator that you can use that will give you line for line what you need to look at houses. So after this video, not right now, go ahead and check the description and get that rehab calculator. It's free. Mistake number 3, and this is a huge one, that is banking on a perfect appraisal. The appraisal is such a large part of the BRRRR method and the BRRRR process. This small local bank or DSCR lender will send out a third-party appraiser to look at the property and see what the actual market value is now after it's fixed up. And they're going to use that number and give you a loan up to 80% of that number. So naturally, you want the property to appraise for as much as possible. You can get ahead of a lot of this by making sure to fix the property up nicely. Make these rental properties nice. Make them where somebody wants to live in them, not has to live in them. This is a mistake that I made at the beginning. I would say, oh, this is a rental property. I'm just going to slap lipstick on this pig. Someone's going to have to move in here. Who cares about the condition? Well, I learned my lesson. That is a recipe for disaster. The appraisal is going to be low, the rent's going to be low, and the temps are going to move out because it's not a nice house and people want to live in nice places. So the nicer you make make the property. You might have a little bit more in it because the rehab's bigger because you're doing more to the project. However, it will appraise for more, which is what you need to happen to have enough equity, and you'll attract better tenants that will pay you more rent and stay longer, and it all works out. So make it a little bit nicer is a huge way to get the higher appraisal. The second thing that you can do to ensure that you get the right appraisal is meeting the appraiser at the property. Every single time me or my team member have met the appraiser at the property just to walk with them, give them access, show them our numbers, show them what we think it's worth and why we think it's worth that, and everything we did to the property, we get the number that we need. The few times I haven't got the appraisal that I've needed is because me or my team members have not met the appraiser at the property. If the appraiser's walking the property on their own, they're going to poke around, maybe take a few pictures, and they're going to be very conservative on what they appraise it for because they don't know what you needed to appraise for. Now, just because you're meeting them there doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the appraisal if it's way higher than the property's actually worth. However, there's always some leeway. If the property's probably worth $210 or $215, the appraiser could easily appraise that for $200 if you're not meeting them there. But if you meet them there and explain the situation and you're not asking for $250, they can probably get you that $210 or $215 that you need. So meet the appraiser there. If you take anything from this video, that's the number one thing you should take. Mistake number 4, not having your lenders lined up. If you're going to look at a property and you're making an offer, but you don't have that initial lender for the purchase and the rehab lined up, you're going to be scrambling, either not making an offer until you get it lined up or making an offer without the lender lined up, and you could be wasting everybody's time. You'll probably have a contingency in there, obviously, if you don't have the lending lined up yet. However, if you have the lending lined up, you're able to make faster offers. You kind of know which price points and buy boxes you need to be looking into, and you're not wasting everybody's time, including yours. So getting that initial lender lined up on the front end, that private lender or hard money lender, or maybe a line of credit you have on your house or a business, and having access to quick cash will allow you to make strong offers and potentially buy the property cheaper. If you're able to buy a property with a cash offer, knowing you have a private lender's money without a contingency, you're potentially going to be able to buy it cheaper than somebody else that's offering with a ton of contingencies, because that seller or that wholesaler is not going to be sure if they're going to close. So having your funding lined up on the front end will allow you to potentially get a better deal and be faster. And then on the back end, when you're looking to refinance, you need to get approved from a local bank and a DSCR lender before you're even doing the project. You're going to go meet these lenders. You're going to find DSCR lenders by just talking to other investors or using FasterFreedom Capital. We have our own DSCR lending company, great rates. So go ahead and go to FasterFreedomCapital.com, and you can go to these local banks as well and talk to the commercial lending division and get some type of comfortability with either lending source. They're not going to give you a blanket approval, but what they will do is they'll say, yes, you have a guidance limit of up to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 that we will lend you on a good deal. Now, they're still going to underwrite the deal and they can still tell you no. However, if it's a good deal and they gave you that guidance limit, it's much more likely they're going to actually be able to do that refinance for you and make things happen faster. As I mentioned earlier, it costs money to hold these properties. So if you're able to get the refinance done as soon as the bank will allow you to do it, it will save you money on that short-term interest rates. So get everything lined up beforehand, get approvals and get connections and relationships made so that when you're doing a deal, you're able to execute each of those financing partners when they're needed to maximize time. And mistake number 5 is by far the most common out of all of them, people thinking that the BRRRR method and investing in real estate is passive. Investing in real estate is not passive. It can eventually be more passive than not. However, once you're learning this process, as you're doing it, before you get a tenant in place, and even after you get a tenant in place, you will quickly find out that it is not passive income. Everybody likes to say that because passive income sounds great. Sitting on a beach, not doing anything and having money come in, that's not going to happen for a long time. Now for me, I have luckily gotten to the point where it is passive. I can't tell you the last 50 single family rental properties we bought. I have a flipping company that buys them. My business partner looks at them. He decides if we're going to keep them as rentals or not. We throw them to our construction company. They rehab them. We throw them to a property management company, and they end up managing the properties. And I have not been to a flipping company meeting or a property management company meeting in years. I spend my time building other active income streams, like posting on social media and having my community of people that I teach to do what we do. But this part of the investing game is passive for me. However, I've been doing it for 11 years and worked my butt off in certain aspects of the business to make it eventually passive, as well as partnering with the right person. That's kind of the hack back here. If you can partner with the right person, they can take a lot off of your back and you can take a lot off of their back, and what they're doing can be passive to you and what you're doing can be passive to them. So it's all about the right partnership. I always say 1 + 1 can equal 10 if you have the right partner and hire the right people. You have to be willing to give up control and give autonomy. That comes with experience from you and understanding how to explain and train the processes to others. So eventually it will be passive, but don't go into this thinking it's passive. You'll be sorely disappointed and may even be discouraged enough to not do the deal. Put in the work. It's going to require work. We're trying to help you create wealth here. That's going to come with work, effort, and energy. But eventually you can build the systems to make this thing passive or have it be active, but have it be your full-time job where you're in control of your finances. You're making more money through all the avenues of real estate than you ever could make at a W-2 job. And this is why a lot of people end up joining my community, because they can do it on their own, but they know they can do it faster. They know they can do it with less headaches, and they know they can scale more at a higher level, following somebody else's groove path and having a second set of eyes to lean on for every single project. If that interests you, again, at the top of the description, there is an application to apply to become a part of my community. We don't just take everybody, we take the right people and we help them change their lives. And if that's not for you, no big deal. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you have not, and check out my podcast, The FasterFreedom Show, where we do deep dives into a lot of this. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, I will see you on the next one. And here's a video here that explains the BRRRR Method in detail.